Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £1.3 billion every year. That's almost £3.6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 14 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
That's the subject out the vehicle.
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a number of highly skilled police units,
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
they're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those conmen, scammers and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, a man who was supposedly seriously injured in Bradford Lidl stages a suspiciously rapid recovery.
He decided to get up and he walked out of the ambulance and went back into the store to speak to the store manager.
A healthy dose of skepticism is served on an accident in a smoothie bar. And a clumsy commuter's claim hits the buffers when station CCTV disproves his story.
You can see that the cause of it is him just being in such a rush, and he's clearly not watched his footing at the bottom of the stairs, and he's just fallen down the steps.
Supermarket shopping isn't generally regarded as a hazardous activity. At worst, you might forget the milk or find they've run out of your favourite cereal. But a shopper from Bradford recently suffered a serious injury at his local branch of Lidl.
Good afternoon, AIG, David Halstead speaking.
David Halstead is from Lidl's insurers, AIG.
Mr. Iqbal stated that he had slipped on a wet bakery bag that was on the floor in his local Lidl store. He sustained injuries to his lower back and to parts of his leg. His claim would have been worth somewhere in the region of about £10,000 to £12,000.
Concerned staff rushed to help, but almost immediately his behaviour seemed at odds with the claim that he'd been badly injured.
Mr. Iqbal had actually insisted on an ambulance being called to convey him to hospital. However, once he'd gone into that ambulance and he was sat outside the store, he decided to get up and he walked out of the ambulance and went back into the store to speak to the store manager to ensure that they had accurately recorded the injuries that he had sustained in that fall.
Hang on a minute. He miraculously got out of the ambulance without assistance and went back inside. Was he off his trolley? It wasn't long before Mr. Iqbal contacted the supermarket with a claim for compensation. But the insurers were one step ahead and had viewed the CCTV footage from the day of the accident.
It became obvious that Mr. Iqbal had observed this bag on the floor. He was positioning his shopping trolley to one side of the bakery bag to stop anyone else interfering with it, and then slowly he walks up to that bag, and you can see once he's checked to see if anyone is watching him, he then actually falls quite dramatically onto the floor.
Mr. Iqbal hadn't counted on the CCTV cameras showing what had really happened when he slipped on the bakery bag.
Given the evidence that we had, which was overwhelmingly demonstrative that it was a fraudulent claim, really we had little option other than to refer the matter to IFED.
Also known as the City of London Police's Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED specialise in combating insurance fraud. Made up of an elite group of officers, including DC Mike Monkton, they were immediately suspicious that Iqbal might have had previous.
Asking for it to be put in the accident book sort of suggests there's a bit of pre-planning and knowledge of how the insurance industry works. Most people wouldn't know that companies have accident books and things need to be recorded.
Sure enough, the IFED investigation revealed that this supermarket scammer was an unsavoury character.
When IFED started looking into Iqbal, they discovered that he'd put a previous claim in May that year. He'd claimed that he was injured when visiting a gym. He said he was using a punch bag. Apparently it came back and hit him in the face.
And then he hit the gym's insurers with a claim for personal injury. It was all starting to sound familiar.
Both cases were sort of grouped together, so the Lidl case and the gym case. That was referred to the Crown Prosecution Service, and he was charged with 2 counts of fraud by false representation. He was sentenced in total to 10 months imprisonment, which was suspended for a period of 2 years. He was also ordered to complete 280 hours community service.
Mr. Iqbal not only trying to defraud Lidl out of the money to benefit himself, there's naturally a cost to the emergency services when they called the ambulance out to take him to the hospital, and again for the police when they were called in to investigate this crime.
The fact that Iqbal was prepared to waste the precious resources of the police and ambulance service, who could have been helping people genuinely in need, was reflected in the judgment against him.
He was also ordered to pay nearly £10,000 in costs. That was divided between the 2 insurance companies and also an amount to the National Health Service. I mean, in my opinion, Iqbal, he knew what he was doing. He knew what there was wrong to make these claims, but he still tried to basically con the insurance industry out of money that he wasn't entitled to.
If Mr. Iqbal had used his loaf, he'd have realised that he would never have gotten away with the bakery bag scam. Mr. Iqbal slipped up when he got back on his feet too quickly. But across the pond, this con artist managed to squeeze every last drop from his smoothie bar fall. On the face of it, Danny Johnson suffered a horrific accident when he visited Just a Minute. Seen here entering the premises, he walks to the counter, then innocently peruses the menu of fruity treats, completely unaware of the lurking danger. Before he can place an order, disaster strikes. Man down. Not exactly a small chap, Johnson takes a heavy fall. Despite the other customer's heartless lack of concern, he later claimed that he had possibly fractured his wrist. Just a Minute staff members call for help, and he's attended by the fire department. A good 20 minutes after the fall, he's eventually stretchered to a local hospital. Johnson later attempted to claim compensation from Just a Minute for his fruity fall, which he alleged had been caused by spilled liquid on the floor. He claimed that the company had been negligent by not mopping it up and making the area safe for its health-conscious customers. The smoothie bar decided to check out his story and studied the CCTV. The fall certainly looks bad, but less than a minute before, this happened. Let's see that again. The man with the cap on deliberately pours his drink on the floor using his right hand, which is partially shielded from the camera. The position of the spilled liquid was in the exact location of the fall. He then leaves the premises, and seconds later, Johnson enters. Looks at the location of the spill, walks around, doesn't purchase anything, returns to the spill, and then executes the fall. The footage had effectively grassed up Johnson and his accomplice, David Williams. The company crushed the claim and passed their evidence to the authorities. Justice was served. Williams received 12 months probation, community service, and a large fine, while Johnson is still at large. They'd been bananas to think they could get away with extracting money from the smoothie bar and callously wasting the fire department's precious time. Later, a fraudster is found out when his tall tales turn out to be a stack of lies.
I think it's highly unlikely that he could have been burgled 5 times, and I think it's highly unlikely that he would have been unlucky enough to be the victim of a street robbery 3 times.
Running isn't always good for you, especially if you're late for a train.
You can clearly see this gentleman running into the station. He's obviously in a great hurry, running to the way he is. It's looking like it's a disaster about to happen.
And the Royal Mail delivers on preventing postal insurance scams.
It was a satisfying result in that we identified the fraud, we acted on it, and we stopped it.
Many fraudsters slip up because they don't realise that insurance companies share information about fraud. Insurers also have long memories, as this next story demonstrates. John Beadle, RSA's counter-fraud manager, was involved from the beginning.
This case is a very good example that justice can sometimes take a very long time. So this was way back in August 2008 when Mr. Hussain took out a policy with us and within a month made a claim for a burglary at his house in Leeds. He alleged that a number of items amounting to some several £1,000s were stolen during this burglary. These included a TV, a surround sound system, a laptop, a Louis Vuitton bag, a Cartier wristwatch, £500 cash, and other expensive items.
Right from the start, doubts were raised about Mr. Hussain's version of events.
Well, we were a little suspicious because of the close proximity to the claim, to the policy being taken out, although that can happen, of course.
Even so, the case warranted further investigation, and RSA took a closer look at the man who claimed to be the innocent victim of a burglary.
We looked into the claim and very quickly established that Mr. Hussain had made similar claims with 2 other insurers. And when we looked further into these with the other insurers, we realised they were for all the same items.
If the story Mr. Hussain was telling was true, then he'd owned 3 sets of the same items. He'd been burgled 3 times, and each time the burglars had taken the same things. He was either the unluckiest man in Yorkshire, or something wasn't right. Proof of the latter came from his documentation.
When we shared the invoices supplied by Mr. Hussain, it became apparent that the invoices were identical. So having been paid out by other insurers for these bogus claims, he has then come to us making an allegation of burglary for the same items, using the same invoices.
RSA immediately acted to stop the claim going through, and then reviewed their communications with Mr. Hussain.
It's quite often the case that somebody who knows that their claim is being investigated will actually be very aggressive and push for immediate payment. And in this case, Mr. Hussain was doing exactly that, trying to put pressure on the claims handler to settle the claim, saying that he would complain to the Ombudsman about the poor service that RSA was providing.
But these bully boy tactics hadn't worked. The insurers were convinced by the evidence that they had to put a stop to Hussain's activities.
So we had determined that this was a complete and utter fraud, and we reported Mr. Hussain to the police, and needless to say, we did not pay this claim.
But Hussain was prepared to go to any lengths to avoid being brought to book, and he came up with an outrageous tactic to try and escape justice.
Quite strangely in this case, Mr. Hussain was alleging that it wasn't him who was making the claim, and there's a mistaken identity, and it was somebody else making the claim on his behalf. Certainly we didn't believe him, but it just cast enough doubt in the minds of the Crown Prosecution Service. The CPS took the view that it wouldn't be safe to continue with the prosecution, and it was dropped at that time. Sometimes these things happen and you have to just shrug your shoulders and get on with the next case.
It was a bitter blow, but RSA had stopped Hussain in his tracks and avoided a fraudulent payout. As far as they were concerned, there the matter rested, until 5 years later.
Out the blue, we were contacted by Northumbria Police investigating an alleged street robbery involving Mr. Hussain, where he has had a number of very expensive items stolen during the robbery.
It all sounded very familiar, and true to form, Hussain hadn't stopped there.
They actually found he'd made 3 such claims. I think it's highly unlikely that he could have been burgled 5 times, and I think it's highly unlikely that he would be unlucky enough to be the victim of a street robbery 3 times, and obviously the police thought so as well. And all these cases were joined together, and he was prosecuted for fraud totalling in excess of £90,000. So in early 2015, Mr. Hussain appeared at Crown Court, charged with 9 counts of fraud, and after a trial he was found guilty on all 9 counts. Mr. Hussain was then sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. So after a 5-year wait, we do feel that justice was at last served.
Proving that the best things come to those who wait. Online shopping has made it that much easier to indulge your inner Imelda Marcos. Shoes are big business. Quick and efficient delivery services go hand in hand with successful footwear sales. And when things go wrong, insurance is there to step in and foot the bill, but only if the claim is genuine. Martin Hancock is a Royal Mail investigation manager, and he looked into a case of shoe returns going walkies.
Royal Mail was receiving a number of compensation claims for missing parcels going to a company in Cheshire.
Customers have been sending back shoes they'd bought that didn't fit and requesting refunds. But the company claimed that the parcels were going missing in the post and told their customers to claim a refund from the Royal Mail.
Over a 15-month period, we received over 200 complaints for compensation for missing parcels. Each claim varied between £10 to £50 for the shoes. In total, all the claims coming into Royal Mail totaled around £7,500. That's a big amount for Royal Mail, especially on the volume of complaints, and was disproportionate to other companies in the area.
It was a huge amount of money, and Royal Mail kicked off an investigation. One of the first steps was to analyse the claims. Sure enough, a pattern emerged.
It only affected first and second class parcels and not other parcels that were traceable. The company were receiving signed for and special delivery items. All these parcels were being delivered without any going missing. The fact none of the traceable items were going missing was suspicious.
But there was a possible explanation.
We suspected the company, on the majority of parcels going to their premises for first and second class, they were denying receipt of them, actively encouraging them to claim compensation from Royal Mail.
Without a trail of paperwork to prove otherwise, the customers had to take the company's word for it. The motivation was purely financial.
We believe that the company were telling customers that parcels were going missing in the post so they could resell shoes they'd already sold before. The company, by doing this, made money twice out of the sale of the shoes.
They had potentially uncovered a huge-scale fraud, but they still needed solid proof.
We purchased shoes from them and returned the parcels to them. We knew the parcels had been delivered and waited for a refund. No refund came, and when we contacted them, they told us our parcels had gone missing in the post.
It simply wasn't true, but the response confirmed suspicions that an organised scam was afoot.
As a result of our inquiries, we performed an operation that involved searching the business and home premises. During these searches, we recovered the shoes we had sent in and also customers had sent in and were allegedly missing in the post.
It was the evidence the investigation team needed, and the company was now on the back foot.
We interviewed both the directors of the company who admitted fraud that led to a subsequent prosecution in court. Both received a 12-month suspended sentence, £6,000 costs for the investigation and court, and had 200 hours community service. They also paid £7,500 compensation back to Royal Mail. It was a satisfying result in that we identified the fraud, we acted on it, and we stopped it. And again, Royal Mail does that on every case.
The UK's roads are regularly patrolled by organised criminal gangs on the hunt for ordinary motorists like you and me. Their aim? To trigger induced collisions, so-called crash-for-cash accidents. Detective Inspector Dave Hindmarsh of the Metropolitan Police explains how it works.
An induced collision is where you generally have what's called a decoy car and a client car. The client car is the car that they want someone to crash into. Once they've found their target, then the decoy car will cause the client car to brake and a collision occurs.
These gangs don't care who gets hurt or how badly. They just want to get their hands on the insurance money. A staggering £392 million is fraudulently lost to crash-for-cash gangs every year. The police have had enough, and they're determined to get these criminals off our roads. DI Hindmarsh recently broke one of the capital's biggest crash-for-cash fraud rings.
This particular case was brought to us by a uniformed officer in the south of London who had come across a collision, become very suspicious about the collision. There was some discrepancy around the ownership of the vehicle and insurance, which had led to an individual being arrested. He later found a crib sheet with effectively how to commit an induced collision.
Further investigation into the suspect, named Malik Ahmad, led the police officer to a claims management company called Star Accident Claims.
He identified that the person he'd arrested was in fact the son of the owner, and the son in fact worked at the claims management company.
The fact that Ahmad, an employee of Star Accident Management, had been involved in an induced collision immediately put the operations of the whole company under suspicion, and the father, also named Malik Ahmad, was arrested too.
There was a search carried out where the police officer seized in excess of 56 files that he believed were suspicious. The files that were taken were all collisions that were in the process of being dealt with through the insurance companies. My team looked at 26 of the claims. We contacted various individuals who were named within those claims and identified that some of them weren't even aware that their details had been used. It proved to us that this company had been forging signatures, forging people's details, so saying that people were witnesses to a particular collision when they weren't, or that they had been in a collision as a passenger when they had not been.
Accident management companies fraudulently exaggerating claims for a bigger payout is sadly nothing new. But the truly sinister aspect of this case was that the company was inducing its own accidents, putting other road users at risk of injury or even death. Their motive was pure greed.
We only looked at 26 files. Now the value to the loss of the insurance companies was around about £290,000.
The criminals were pocketing a staggering amount of money and endangering others. They had to be shut down.
We took the case to the Crown Prosecution Service, who gave us the authority to charge 4 individuals.
Justice was then served on the 4-man gang who tried to claim £290,000.
The father and son received 3.5 years imprisonment. Another individual, Jamal Akbar, received 2 years imprisonment. And finally, Mashoud Ahmed received a suspended 2-year prison sentence.
Thanks to the efforts of DI Dave Hindmarsh and his team in pursuing the mob of ruthless crooks, there's one less crash-for-cash ring on the UK's roads. And it's not just drivers that are preyed on by fraudsters. Public transport is a major target too. Someone who deals with this on a daily basis is Julie Randall, Fraud Prevention Officer for transportation company First Group.
As a company, we have a zero tolerance to fraudsters, and therefore all claims, regardless of value, will be investigated thoroughly. We see a constant flow of claims into the department where fraud has been attempted. However, we will fight each and every one of the claims, and this year we've had some fantastic successes. Anyone thinking about pursuing a fraudulent claim against us, they should remember the tools we have in place. CCTV, telematics, latest analytical software. We also have highly skilled and trained fraud operatives, and we will push for the highest penalties.
And it's these tools that allow them to be so successful in detecting and prosecuting fraud.
If you have an injury claim and it's genuine, that's fine, we just want to pay you what it's worth. But if you exaggerate your claim, we can kick the whole claim out under fundamental dishonesty.
Julie and her colleagues at First Group, like claims team manager Lee Ingram, have long been training their sights on fraud. Lee recently brought his expertise to a case at a train station.
Our gentleman's claiming that he's injured his leg after falling down some stairs.
According to the injured passenger, it wasn't down to clumsiness or haste.
The claimant's saying that the cause of his fall is due to the bottom step being defective, possibly slippery due to its metal construction as well, due to the cold weather, and also the fact that the handrail didn't go all the way down to the bottom step. And he's saying for that reason he's lost his footing on the last step and fallen flat on his face.
The man backed up his claim with a medical report.
The injury claim submitted to us involved a rupture to the Achilles tendon and a ruptured calf muscle. The injury resulted in being in plaster for about 9 weeks. He would have had private surgery costs. He would have needed some help with his domestic chores. It would have come to about £50,000, including legal costs, so not a small claim.
Far from it. In fact, it was around double the average annual wage. With such a large amount of money at stake, Lee decided to investigate and discovered that no one else had seen the fall.
There weren't actually any witnesses to that accident that we're aware of, other than probably the best witness that we could have had, which was CCTV footage.
Ah, our old friend CCTV footage. Presumably, this would corroborate the man's story, especially as train stations have cameras everywhere.
You can clearly see this gentleman running into the station. He's obviously in a great hurry to get to his train. Running the way he is, it's looking like it's a disaster about to happen. You can see him running down the middle of the stairwell. As he gets to the bottom here, he just takes a real heavy fall. It is a nasty fall. It looks like it hurts.
To add insult to injury, the doors close and the man also misses his train.
Looking at this footage, are we to blame for this? You can see that the cause of it is him just being in such a rush, and he's clearly not watched his footing at the bottom of the stairs, and he's just fallen down the steps.
Not for the first time in his career, Lee found that the CCTV evidence was completely at odds with the claim.
There's no disputing the fact that this was quite a nasty fall. I mean, it's never in doubt. The question is, what has caused the fall?
According to the passenger, the main culprit was a defective step, something else Lee looked at.
He's saying it's slippery when it's cold, and the metal's not appropriate material for this type of step. So we've gone out and inspected it. What we've actually found out is that the step itself is made of concrete. The temperature that day, having checked the weather records, never dropped below 4, so there was no freezing involved. And the steps were all coated with a non-slip surface, so the step was definitely not defective.
Unsurprisingly, the claim came off the rails at this point.
We turned the claim down to his solicitors, and we've never heard from them since. There are signs in most stations saying that you shouldn't run in a station. If you look back to when you were a child and running down a corridor, you would have heard a teacher's voice saying, "Stop running." There was a reason for that. It's dangerous to run in a busy place. Accidents can happen. Probably the moral to this particular story is that people need to take more care to safeguard their own safety and stop looking for someone to blame.